more controversy. This time around, the Chicago Teachers Union, they're facing a lot of backlash for a post that paid tribute to Assata Shakur. She is a convicted cop killer who spent decades on the run from the FBI, including she ended after she broke out of prison. She then made her way to Cuba, where she spent the rest of her life before dying last week. The social media post, it kind of praised her as a revolutionary leader and is drawing a lot of sharp criticism from some public officials, including the alderman that we are speaking with this afternoon. Alderman Riley, thanks so much for being here.
Good to be with you.
What was your immediate reaction when you saw CTU's post honoring Shakur?
I was shocked to be honoring someone who President Obama put on America's most wanted terrorism list. Speaks volumes. This is someone who murdered in cold blood a state trooper and was affiliated with what is known to be a violent terrorist organization, and one that espoused hate. For the CTU, for the Chicago Teachers Union, to be eulogizing this person and canonizing them as a hero, I thought was offensive.
Do you believe that this type of message represents some of the values of CTU as well as some of Chicago's educators?
Well, it seems to me that it represents the values of CTU leadership, but unfortunately, CTU, they're supposed to be representing the views of some almost 30,000 professional teachers across the city of Chicago. And I can tell you a number of our educators here at CPS, at our public school system, are married to first responders. So imagine the dinner conversation mom and dad are having with their kids when one is a Chicago public school teacher and the other is a Chicago cop. And so that alone is an issue. But the bottom line is the rank and file educators here have their own politics. And I would argue not nearly as extreme left as the rhetoric that's coming out of the Chicago Teachers Union. And so by eulogizing this known terrorist and cop killer, the CTU has painted their own membership in a poor way, when many of these people are phenomenal professional educators, and that's really all they're focused on, is educating kids. So the Teachers Union has gotten way outside of their lane of traffic here. Last I checked, a union's job is to represent their membership at the collective bargaining table and work for their working conditions and to ensure that their rights as employees are protected, but not to be wading into this ridiculous ideology war where Marxism and, frankly, violent uprising is being espoused by this organization. It's unacceptable.
Should mention that Fox 32 Chicago has reached out to CTU for comment, and as of this moment, we still have not heard back from them to hear their side of this. Alderman, I want to ask you, how do you think that the union should be held accountable for posting this on social media?
Well, I think at a very bare minimum, our local political leadership should denounce this statement. We have elected officials here who have benefited greatly from the political action committee that the teachers union runs. And I would argue that our county president, Tony Preckwinkle, should denounce this statement. And certainly Mayor Brandon Johnson, who is a former employee of the Chicago Teachers Union, he needs to lead by example. He no longer works for that union. He works for the people of the city of Chicago. And I think the mayor owes it to the people of Chicago to denounce this horrible statement and for him to encourage his former partners at the teachers union to walk this statement back. It was highly irresponsible. We should never, ever celebrate someone who made a name for herself killing cops in cold blood and also landing on the United States terrorist list. Worth mentioning, she was broken out of prison and never was held accountable for that murder. Just a couple years after she committed that murder against that police officer, she was broken out of prison and she fled to Cuba, where she led a very comfortable life. And so people also forget that very important fact here too.
What impact, if any, do you think that this incident will have on a relationship between CTU and some of the parents of the kids?
I can't imagine that this has done anything to improve that relationship. You know, if you look at the performance of our public schools, it is still pretty moribund. We are not educating kids at the high level that we should. And it's frustrating because we have so many talented educators in our school system. But distractions like this from the Chicago Teachers Union only do more harm to the credibility of the school system. And it also raises the question, are some of the more militant members of the CTU who are in our classrooms, are they trying to indoctrinate our children with this horrible view that there is justification for political violence? And I think, based on what we've seen play out in recent weeks across the country, this is exactly the wrong time to be sending that message to our kids. There should never, ever be violence, especially around political speech. So this is a very troubling development.
We did hear from New Jersey's governor who did speak out about this. What do you think that this incident does in terms of putting Chicago in the national spotlight for for another negative reason?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. We have a lot of struggles here for sure, but this is a great city. And when we have the local teachers union getting up and espousing this rhetoric and celebrating someone who literally killed someone, was found guilty of that, and then escaped prison, that's not painting our city in a good light. And there are lots of very positive things that we can talk about when we talk about the city of Chicago, but this is not one of those areas where the teachers union is helping us. I'd say quite the opposite. They should be embarrassed for these remarks.
I know that you spoke with some of your other alders a little bit earlier today. What's been the response from them? And have any of you spoken to any parents that may have kids in Chicago public schools? And have they provided any insight on what they're now seeing from CTU?
Yeah, a number of my colleagues were at our press event earlier today, and each of them reported their own stories, either receiving phone calls from upset parents or also from educators who happen to be married to first responders. We've seen a mix of those things, but all of the feedback has been negative. And people are asking, why is the teachers union, which is supposed to be really representing their union members at the bargaining table, why are they opining on things like this in the first place? So again, it raises questions about what I consider to be the great work our rank and file educators are doing in our school system. It calls into question whether or not some of those folks may be using their classroom access to indoctrinate kids. And I don't think any parents, regardless of your political ideology, want teachers planting these types of seeds in their kids' heads. Whether you're a centrist like me, or a far lefty or a far righty on the political spectrum, you don't want to hear that there are educators pushing your kids in one direction or the other when it comes to political beliefs. But no one should be advocating for political violence to achieve their goals. That's the really, really dangerous and troubling message here, is that somehow in some circumstances that it's okay to commit acts of political violence. That is absolutely wrong.
So far, we have not heard a response from CTU about this, and at least as of this morning, that post was still up there on X. In your viewpoint, what do we think and what do we see happening next in this saga?
Well, obviously, we're hearing crickets from the mayor's office. I think the mayor of the city of Chicago, who has control to a degree over a Chicago public school system, and ironically, or not so ironically, is a former employee of the Chicago Teachers Union, has not spoken out on this. Frank, he should have spoken out on this last Friday when this statement was first made, or at any point over the weekend when he was running into members of the Chicago media. Now here we are near the end of the day on Monday, so more than 72 hours after this statement came out, and we haven't heard a peep out of Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. That is also very disturbing. The bottom line is my colleagues want to hear from the teachers union an apology and a repudiation of their message from our mayor, who's supposed to represent the entire city of Chicago.
Alderman Riley, is this something that you plan to bring in front of the entire council?
Look, let's see what the mayor does, if he responds at all. If we don't get a response from the mayor, it may be that we need to call for some public hearings to get to the bottom of this. But the bottom line is that the teachers union needs to stick to what their core mission is, which is supposed to be representing the interest of their union members at a bargaining table, not celebrating the life of someone who murdered a police officer and then was broken out of prison and fled to Cuba.